The scream hit the cabin before the plane ever left the ground. It tore through first class like metal scraping bone, sharp enough to freeze breath mid-inhale. Heads snapped. Conversations died. A champagne flute rattled in a manicured hand. In the aisle, Avery Collins stood rigid, her shadow cutting across seat 4A as she pointed down and shouted for someone to be removed. Right now. Get her out of my seat. The engines hummed low and constant, a restrained animal under the floor. The aircraft was still at the gate, doors sealed, lights warm and flattering, the kind meant to soften money. No one moved at first. Then a ripple of tension ran the length of the cabin. People leaned back, leaned away. Phones lifted without permission, lenses hungry. Jordan Pierce did not scream back. She sat still, shoulders relaxed, spine straight, hands resting on her knees, as if this were a waiting room and not a public trial. She wore a dark hoodie, soft from years of washing, cuffs faintly frayed. Her sneakers were worn, practical, the kind you buy because they last. Her boarding pass lay folded between her fingers, creased once, then twice. She breathed slowly. In, out. Her eyes stayed up. Avery's laugh cut through the hush, loud and brittle. Unbelievable. I step on my plane for 2 minutes, and someone like you is already squatting in my seat. The words landed heavy. Someone like you. They hung there, ugly and precise. A man in row 2 shifted, jaw tightening. A woman near the window stared straight ahead, lips pressed thin. No one interrupted. Jordan blinked once. Calm, polite. There must be a misunderstanding, she said, voice even, careful not to spill. My boarding pass says, Avery barked again, louder this time, the sound bouncing off polished wood and leather. A misunderstanding? No, sweetheart. The only misunderstanding is you thinking you belong up here. She flicked her gaze down Jordan's clothes like lint on a sleeve. Hoodie. Bargain bin shoes. You look like you crawled out of Coach just to take photos for your social media. She spread her hands, palms up, inviting the room to agree. Look around. This is first class. A murmur. Not outrage. Discomfort. A cough. Someone cleared their throat and didn't finish the thought. Avery stepped closer, her perfume sharp, invasive. Let me help you with reality. People dressed like that don't sit in premium cabins. You don't blend in. You're not subtle. You stick out like a misplaced delivery package. Jordan straightened a fraction. My ticket? Oh, please. Avery's eyes narrowed. You probably scanned someone else's code or flashed a smile at some clueless gate agent. Don't lie. People like you always try to sneak into places that weren't made for you. Gasps. A phone rose higher. A finger tapped record. The flight attendant hurried in, breath shallow, smile already strained. Melissa Grant, early 40s. Years in the air had taught her posture before words. Oh, Miss Collins. Welcome. We'll sort this out. Avery tossed her hair, relief blooming into command. Yes. Sort it out. Because I am not sitting next to. She waved at Jordan as if shooing a fly. This walking downgrade. Jordan inhaled sharply. Avery smirked, sensing momentum. What? You're going to pretend you earned that seat? First class costs more than whatever you make in a quarter. Melissa turned, eyes flicking to the folded pass. Ma'am, may I see your boarding pass again? Avery rolled her eyes so hard her head followed. You're wasting time. Don't embarrass yourselves. She doesn't belong here. Look at her. She's clearly out of place. The phrase carried weight. It dragged history behind it, old and unresolved, sharpened for use. Jordan's fingers tightened. It says 4A. Avery leaned in, smile thin, poisonous. And I say get up. This cabin is for paying passengers, not surprises. A man in row 2 muttered under his breath. This is messed up. Avery heard him and snapped back without turning. Spare me the performative outrage. If she belonged here, she wouldn't be trembling like she's waiting for security to drag her off. Her voice rose, theatrically loud, calibrated for witnesses. You know what this feels like? That time someone climbed over the business class curtain to take photos. Same energy, same desperation. A couple near the galley winced. Avery pointed, disgust open and unfiltered. Why can't people just stay in the sections designed for them? The line detonated. It split the air. Jordan's jaw twitched, a small, controlled fracture. She did not rise to the bait. Avery took the silence as surrender. Oh, look at that. Quiet now. Maybe she finally realized premium cabins are not some diversity charity. She leaned closer, lowering her voice just enough to pretend intimacy while making sure the room heard. You should be grateful I'm not calling security. Usually when someone from coach slips up here, it ends badly. The cabin went cold, ugly. Still. Then Avery delivered the final cut. My father is Richard Collins, and believe me, everyone in this industry knows who actually belongs in these seats. Melissa's eyes widened. The name carried weight. Lawsuits whispered, donations remembered, favors owed. She swallowed and turned back to Jordan, voice smaller now. I'm afraid you'll have to move immediately. A collective intake of breath. Someone whispered, Is she really doing this? Avery smiled, victorious. Good. Let's restore the cabin to its proper order. Humiliation tightened around Jordan's throat. Not sudden, but precise. Targeted. Systemic. She slid a hand into her pocket and touched the folded note she carried everywhere, edges soft from years of being opened and closed. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. The words did not shout. They whispered. Strength did not roar. It steadied. Jordan rose. Avery exhaled dramatically. Finally. Knew you'd figure out your level. Jordan stepped into the aisle. Every step burned. Every stare weighed. Whispers stitched themselves into a narrative she did not consent to. Avery slid into the reclaimed seat, sighing as if settling into justice. She unlocked her phone, thumbs moving fast. Phase 1 complete. Target humiliated on camera. footage uploading. The plane hummed. The doors remained closed. The cabin breathed again, but wrong. Jordan walked toward the back, not to disappear, not to surrender. She walked with her chin level, eyes forward, silence controlled. Cameras tracked her. A woman in 3C whispered just loud enough. See what happens when people pretend to be what they're not. A man across the aisle murmured agreement without looking at her. From her stolen throne, Avery leaned toward Melissa, voice low, engineered to be overheard. Keep an eye on her. People like that get emotional when confronted. Last thing we need is a scene and her claiming she's being targeted. Melissa nodded, absorbing the poison. Avery smiled. Step 2 had begun. Jordan Pierce did not look back. She felt the weight of the cabin shift behind her, the way attention behaves like pressure, like weather. The aisle stretched longer than it should have, narrowed by knees and elbows that didn't move out of courtesy but out of curiosity. The engines continued their steady hum, a mechanical calm that mocked the human noise above it. Jordan counted her steps. Slow, even. She kept her breathing low, controlled, refusing to give the moment what it wanted. Behind her, Avery Collins leaned into comfort with practiced ease. She crossed her legs, lifted a flute of champagne, and smiled at nothing in particular. To the people around her, she was already telling the story again, reshaping it with every sentence. You didn't see how she acted before boarding. I tried to be polite. She was aggressive. She made me feel unsafe. The words slipped out, soft and sweet, coated in concern. Heads nodded. A man with silver hair murmured, "Oh, one of those." Avery's smile widened. Exactly. Melissa Grant stood near the galley, hands clasped too tight, eyes flicking between Jordan's retreating back and Avery's satisfied posture. She felt something wrong, but wrong had layers, and fear had a voice. The Collins name had sued airlines into silence before. Melissa had seen careers end over less. She told herself this was about order, about keeping the peace. She told herself a lot of things. Jordan reached the narrow opening where first class bled into the rest of the plane. The lighting changed there, subtle but unmistakable. Warmer behind her, harsher ahead. A line you felt more than saw. She stepped across it, and the murmurs followed, softer now, but sharper. A teenage boy held his phone chest high, lens angled just enough to pretend innocence. "Yo," he whispered. "She got kicked out of first class." His friend snorted. "Crazy." She looked like she tried to sneak in. Jordan slid into seat 28C, the middle. The armrests pressed in on both sides, plastic unyielding. The window passenger shifted away without thinking. The aisle passenger exhaled, irritated by the inconvenience of her presence. Jordan folded her hands again. Her breath wavered once. She steadied it. She felt the heat in her face, the sting behind her eyes, the familiar ache of being misread and punished for it. She did not cry. Not yet. Her phone buzzed against her thigh. A news alert. Trending clip. Girl caught lying about first-class seat. Already the lie had found its legs. The caption accused her of entitlement, of playing the victim when caught. 30 seconds of video had rewritten her existence. She imagined the ripple outward, Screens lighting up, opinions forming, damage compounding. The woman beside her leaned in, voice low, eyes kind. "I saw everything," she whispered. "I filmed it, and I know exactly who that woman is. She did this on purpose." Jordan blinked. "On purpose?" The woman nodded. "I work aviation ops. That's Richard Collins' daughter. Apex Air. They've been terrified of a young investor Sky Vista's courting." Her voice softened. "I didn't know it was you." Jordan looked at her then, really looked. Middle-aged, brown skin, tired eyes that had seen systems from the inside. "You recognize me?" "I read that profile," the woman said. "The one everyone pretends not to know they read. The secret billionaire, changing the future of travel. That's you, right?" Heat climbed Jordan's cheeks. She hated the attention even when it was kind. "Yes," she said. The woman pressed her hand to Jordan's forearm, brief and grounding. "You didn't deserve any of this. And you're not alone." Something loosened in Jordan's chest. Not relief, resolve. She unlocked her phone. One icon. Clean, unassuming. Pierce Protocol. She tapped it once. Across the country, screens lit up. In a glass conference room in Los Angeles, a compliance director straightened. Coffee forgotten. "Pull everything," she said. "Passenger videos, manifests, crew assignments, upgrade histories, travel logs, social footprints, all of it. This isn't a seating dispute. This is targeted harassment." Back in first class, Avery accepted a refill with a gracious nod. "Thank you. I just need calm after that incident. You saw her, right? The attitude, the entitlement. She practically lunged at me." "That's not what I saw," the attendant said, before she could stop herself. Avery's smile hardened. "That is what happened. And I have footage. If she tries to twist this, I'm ready." She angled her phone just enough to show a draft email. "Incident report. Unstable passenger. Attempted aggressive confrontation." The attendant swallowed. Avery leaned back, victorious. Jordan closed her eyes. The plane felt smaller now, air thick with unspoken things. Why was calm always demanded of her? Why was dignity something she had to earn again and again, while others spent it freely? Her phone buzzed, a message from her lead attorney. "We have what we need. Do not react. We're building the timeline." Another message followed. "Collins's daughter. Deliberate. Stay steady. Endurance wins." Jordan slid the folded note from her pocket, just enough to feel its edges. "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid." The words did not erase the hurt. They kept it from swallowing her. The plane began to move. A gentle roll forward. Avery lifted her flute again, savoring the moment. Around her, the bias she'd planted took root. A mother pulled her child closer as Jordan passed the row ahead. A businessman murmured about standards and order. The narrative spread because it was familiar, because it asked nothing of those who believed it. In Los Angeles, data streamed, identity confirmed, Avery Collins, 34, daughter of Richard Collins, CEO of Apex Air. Prior incidents flagged, 7 sealed, 3 settled, 2 removed by pressure. Behavioral pattern, entitlement, racial profiling, status manipulation. Red flag. Accessed Jordan Pierce's itinerary that morning. The room went quiet. This wasn't an outburst, an analyst said. This was planned. Run comparative logs, the director ordered. Every seating dispute tied to Collins or Apex affiliates. The results stacked up. Ugly. Undeniable. Patterns repeated with different faces and the same outcome. Black passengers. Women of color. Forced downgrades. Silence bought. Back on the plane, Avery leaned toward a businessman, voice dipped in poison. You didn't see how she acted before you boarded. It was embarrassing trying to convince people she belonged. When I confronted her, she started shaking like she knew she'd been caught. People like her always do when they're exposed. Some believed her instantly. Bias made the story stick. A young woman a few rows back filmed Avery in secret, whispering to her boyfriend that she'd seen everything. He urged her to post. She shook her head. Not yet. I need to be sure it helps. In the galley, 2 attendants whispered. Did you see her boarding pass? It really said 4A. So why did we move her? Because of the Collins name, the senior whispered back. Nobody wants trouble with them. What if we made a mistake? The question hung unanswered. The captain's tablet chimed. A red banner bloomed across the screen. Priority alert. Potential civil rights violation flagged by compliance. Passenger Jordan Pierce. Status VIP investor. The captain's jaw set. Is this accurate? The first officer scanned, color draining from his face. That young woman they moved. That was Jordan Pierce. We're already taxiing, the first officer said. Then we taxi back, the captain replied. He reached for the microphone. Jordan felt the shift before she heard it. The deceleration. The subtle lean as the plane slowed. She met the woman's eyes beside her. Something's happening, the woman whispered. Jordan didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her phone buzzed again. Identified. Stand firm. Endurance pays off. Up front, Avery's flute trembled. She frowned, annoyed. What is this? Why are we slowing? The attendant hesitated. Operational review, Miss Collins. Avery scoffed, but something flickered behind her eyes. She typed fast. Phase 2 compromised. They're grounding the plane. As the aircraft turned away from the runway lights, murmurs rose again. Different now. Confusion replacing contempt. A man whispered to his wife that the girl hadn't done anything. Another muttered that if this was because of the woman in first class, she should be ashamed. Jordan sat very still. The storm was no longer outside her. It was moving through the system, waking it up. The cabin sensed the turn before it understood it. The floor tilted almost imperceptibly, a slow correction, like a thought being reconsidered. Overhead, bins creaked. A few passengers looked up at the same time, confused, annoyed, uneasy. The engine softened, their pitch lowering, and the illusion of inevitability broke. Avery Collins stared at the aisle, lips parted. "What is happening?" she snapped at Melissa. "We were about to take off." Melissa swallowed. "The captain said we received an operational flag." "Operational?" Avery scoffed too quickly. "Please. This airline barely knows how to spell operational." She laughed, but the sound didn't land. Her fingers tightened around her phone. Something was wrong. She felt it now, a pressure behind the sternum, unfamiliar and unwelcome. Inside the cockpit, Captain Daniel Ross stood with one hand braced on the console. The red banner still glowed on his tablet. Potential civil rights violation. Review required. Passenger Jordan Pierce. Investor. High priority. Confidential instruction. Return to gate. Secure passenger safety. "I don't care whose daughter she is," Ross said, voice low, controlled. "This is bigger than a spoiled passenger throwing her weight around. If we take off without reviewing this, we risk our licenses." The first officer nodded. "And if the report's accurate, we removed a VIP investor from her rightful seat." "Not just VIP," Ross said. "She's rumored to be the silent partner Sky Vista depends on for the fleet expansion. And she was humiliated on our watch." He pressed the PA button. "Ladies and gentlemen, for safety and compliance reasons, we've been instructed to pause departure and return to the gate. Please remain seated." Groans rippled through the cabin. Complaints followed. But something else moved underneath it, curiosity sharpening into concern. Avery's face drained of color. Just a flicker, but enough. "Return to the gate," she muttered. No. That can't be because of..." She stopped herself. Too late. Melissa was watching now. Passengers were watching. A businessman frowned. This flight seemed fine. "Something serious must have happened," another voice said. Avery forced a shallow laugh. Airlines overreact to everything. Probably a system glitch. Not surprising. Her voice tremored. She typed again. "Did she react? Did you get footage of her being aggressive?" The reply came fast. "Then why is the flight being stopped?" Avery didn't answer. She couldn't. Jordan felt the change in the air before the words reached her row. The sideways glances had shifted. Curiosity replaced contempt. A man across the aisle leaned toward his wife. "She didn't do anything." "I saw the whole thing." Another muttered, "If this is because of that woman in first class, she should be ashamed." Jordan's phone buzzed. "Captain notified. Executive team en route to gate. Do not engage. Silence is your strength." She inhaled slowly. The truth was doing its work. It didn't need her voice. It needed her steadiness. Up front, 2 attendants whispered urgently, "Did you hear the name Pierce? That was Jordan Pierce we moved." "Oh God. I thought that was just a rumor." "She's the one Sky Vista's been courting for that investment package. We could lose our jobs. We could lose the airline." Word spread fast. Fear has a way of running ahead of facts. One attendant glanced toward Avery, who sat rigid now, eyes darting, posture tight like a cornered animal. She knew exactly what she'd done. She'd just never imagined it would cost her this quickly. The aircraft slowed near the terminal. Outside, the gate lights glowed harsh and white. Passengers leaned toward the windows. Security personnel lined the jet bridge. Behind them stood 4 executives in tailored suits, faces set, movements clipped. Avery's breath hitched. "No," she whispered. "This isn't about me. It can't be." Her phone buzzed. A message from her father. "Why is Sky Vista Corporate calling me? What did you do on that plane?" Avery typed back with shaking fingers. "Nothing. I only put someone back where she belonged." The reply came instantly. "Who?" Avery froze. The door opened. Cool air rushed in. The cabin went silent, in a way it hadn't been all flight. A tall woman in a navy suit stepped inside first, eyes scanning with surgical precision. Her gaze landed on Avery. Avery straightened automatically, relief flickering. Finally, someone competent. The woman didn't slow, didn't glance. She walked straight past Avery without acknowledgement. She stopped at row 28. "Miss Pierce," she said gently, "we need to speak with you immediately." Every head turned. The whispering stopped. Even breathing seemed to pause. Jordan remained seated, hands folded, spine straight. She looked up, composed, the calm center of a gathering storm. "Yes," she said. "I'm ready." Avery shot to her feet. "Wait. What? Why her? She's the problem. She stole my seat. The executive turned slowly. "Miss Collins," her voice was colder than metal, "we are fully aware of your identity." Avery swallowed hard. "And we have substantial evidence that your actions today were deliberate and in violation of multiple federal aviation regulations." Gasps. Phones rose again. Avery's face drained completely. "My actions? She doesn't belong in first class." The executive cut her off. "The only thing she didn't belong in was your scheme." Avery's knees nearly buckled. Jordan stepped into the aisle. As she crossed the threshold of the aircraft, the night air hit her face, sharp and clean, like a reset. Blue lights flashed across the tarmac. Emergency vehicles idled nearby, engines low. Sky Vista executives formed a line at the bottom of the jet bridge, posture tight, expressions grim. Inside the plane, passengers pressed against windows, like witnesses to something irreversible. Avery was escorted out seconds later. Not gliding now, stumbling, breath short, composure cracking. Cameras caught everything. The world watched her unravel in real time. Jordan stood still at the base of the stairs. The wind tugged at her hoodie. Her worn sneakers were planted firmly on concrete. She looked calm, silent, unmoved. But she wasn't alone. 2 security officers stepped in close, protective, respectful. The tall executive approached her, softening her tone. "Miss Pierce, thank you for your patience. We understand this experience has been unacceptable. We are here to listen, document, and correct every violation." Avery barked a laugh, brittle and desperate. "Correct? She's the one who caused this." She took my seat. The executive raised a hand. "Miss Collins, please refrain from speaking until our compliance team asks you to." Avery opened her mouth, closed it. She had never been silenced like that. Not in public. Not with witnesses. Not with cameras pointed from the cockpit windows. Inside the plane, whispers flew. That young woman was the investor. Collins attacked the wrong person. Serves her right. I hope she gets banned. I've never seen executives come to the tarmac. The tide had turned. The executive looked back to Jordan. Would you like to make a statement before we proceed? Jordan met her gaze. Not angry, not triumphant. Steady. Yes, she said. I want everything recorded. Every word. Every witness. Every violation. And every action taken to ensure this never happens to another passenger. Even the wind seemed to still. Avery shook her head, disbelief unraveling into panic. This is ridiculous. She shouldn't even be here. The executive turned back to her. We have hours of video footage contradicting your claims. Passenger recordings, cabin cameras, social uploads, and we located your cloud folder labeled AP Meltdown. Avery stiffened, as if struck. You went through my cloud. That's illegal. Security accessed it, the executive replied evenly, as part of a federal civil rights investigation. Avery's breath caught. This isn't real. The executive turned once more to Jordan. Miss Pierce, we will do whatever you request next. Jordan inhaled. The night air filled her lungs. Somewhere inside her pocket, paper brushed skin. She knew what she would ask, and she knew this was bigger than her now. Jordan did not answer immediately. She stood there on the tarmac, the cold night pressing against her face, the weight of the moment settling into her shoulders. The lights from the terminal cast long shadows across the concrete, turning people into silhouettes, authority into shape and posture rather than sound. She reached into her pocket and unfolded the small card she carried everywhere, just enough to feel the texture. Her mother's handwriting. Familiar. Steady. The words grounded her, not as comfort, but as instruction. I want an official report filed tonight, she said at last. Her voice was calm, but it carried. Filed in front of every witness who watched this happen. The executive nodded without hesitation. Done. I want a written apology for the racial and class-based profiling, Jordan continued, not vague, not sanitized. Done. I want the entire cabin crew retrained permanently. Not a one-time seminar. Not optics. Structural change. The executive's jaw tightened. She nodded again. Done. Avery let out a sharp, disbelieving sound. This is insane. This is not about discrimination. This is about her being in the wrong place. She pointed at Jordan, finger shaking now. She didn't belong in first class, and everyone knows it. The executive's eyes turned glacial. Miss Collins, you may stop speaking now. 2 security officers stepped closer. Avery faltered, stumbling back half a step. You can't treat me like this. Do you know who I am? My father. We know exactly who you are, the executive said quietly. And we know exactly what you attempted today. Your name does not protect you here. Behind the glass, a few passengers clapped before they could stop themselves. Others covered their mouths, stunned. Avery turned, horrified, realizing the entire cabin was watching her fall. The executive checked her tablet. Effective immediately, she announced, "The Collins family will be flagged for internal review. All travel privileges with SkyVista Airlines are suspended pending investigation." Avery staggered. "You're banning me? You can't. I'm the daughter of—" "Exactly," the executive cut in. "And that is why we are doing it." Avery's mouth opened. No sound came out. The executive turned back to Jordan, her tone respectful now. "Is there anything else you request before we escort you to the executive lounge?" Jordan looked at Avery then. Not with anger, not with satisfaction, with something quieter. A recognition of what unchecked power does to people when it has never been challenged. Then she looked past her, toward the plane full of witnesses. People who had judged her, filmed her, believed the lie, and were now watching the truth surface. "Yes," Jordan said. "I want the passengers to know what actually happened. All of it." The executive nodded. "We will make the announcement." Avery sucked in air. You can't do this." "You've done enough," the executive replied. Jordan was escorted into a black SUV waiting at the edge of the tarmac. As the door closed, the noise of the airport dulled. The vehicle pulled away, smooth and deliberate, heading toward a private entrance. Inside, the silence was different, heavy, anticipatory. The executive lounge overlooked the grounded aircraft. Floor-to-ceiling glass, bright lights, a long table already set, water untouched, chairs arranged with intention. A row of senior SkyVista officials stood as Jordan entered. No one offered her a handshake. They offered space. Avery was brought in moments later, flanked by security. Her phone was gone. Her hair disheveled. Her confidence stripped down to reflex. She remained standing. No one offered her a chair. The divide was immediate. The woman who had been humiliated. The woman who had orchestrated it. Rowan Evers, SkyVista's CEO, cleared his throat. "On behalf of the airline, I want to apologize for the incident on our aircraft." "Incident?" Avery snapped. "You mean when I was attacked?" Rowan didn't look at her. "We deeply regret the discriminatory treatment you endured, Miss Pierce, and we are prepared to compensate you." Jordan lifted a hand. Rowan froze. She leaned back slightly, eyes steady. "Compensate me with what?" Rowan swallowed. "A monetary settlement. Lifetime first-class status. Exclusive lounge access." Avery scoffed. "Oh, please. Stop kissing up to her." She manipulated the situation. Two security officers shifted closer. "Miss Collins," Rowan said sharply, "if you interrupt again, you will be escorted out." Avery sat down hard, shock rippling through her. Jordan placed her phone on the table. The screen lit up with data. "Timelines, names, incidents. Let's be clear," she said. "You're not paying me for what happened today. You're paying for what you allowed to happen for years." The room stiffened. My team identified 7 incidents involving Ms. Collins and racially targeted seating disputes on SkyVista-operated flights, Jordan continued. 3 were buried. 2 resulted in passengers being removed. 2 never reached public record. Avery's eyes widened. How did you even—" Jordan didn't look at her. "Your crew bowed to the Collins name and humiliated a paying first-class passenger because you feared a competitor's daughter more than you respected your own policies." Rowan exhaled slowly. "You're right." "Wrong," Jordan replied. "I'm owed." Silence fell. "What would you like us to do?" Rowan asked. Jordan leaned forward. "Write this down. 1. Immediate termination review of all crew involved. 2. Mandatory anti-bias training for all frontline staff. Annual. Certified. 3. A public acknowledgement of Sky Vista's history with discriminatory seating practices. Avery shook her head. "That will damage the airline." Jordan glanced at her once. Silence. 4. A scholarship program under Sky Vista in my mother's name for young black girls entering aviation and STEM. 5. A binding policy ensuring no passenger ever loses their seat due to influence or intimidation. Ever again. Rowan nodded after each point, voice tight. Agreed. "And lastly," Jordan said, "the Collins family is barred from manipulating Sky Vista operations in any capacity." Avery shot up. "You can't do that. My father will ruin this airline." Rowan finally turned to her. "Your father has already been informed. He instructed us to proceed exactly as Ms. Pierce requires." Avery's knees gave. She sank back into the chair, staring at the table as if it had betrayed her. Jordan felt the weight lift slightly. Not victory. Responsibility. She hadn't come here for revenge. She'd come to make sure this never happened again. Rowan slid the agreement across the table. "If you sign, we implement immediately." Jordan signed without hesitation. Avery lunged forward. "You can't just— this isn't—" Security blocked her path. "Meeting adjourned," Rowan said. 3 days later, the aviation industry woke up to a statement that could not be spun. Sky Vista acknowledges pattern of discriminatory seating practices, commits to reform following incident involving investor Jordan Pierce. The story moved faster than outrage ever had. And it wasn't finished yet. The world did not wait for morning. It never does when power shifts. By the time the sun crept over the skyline, the statement was everywhere, unedited, unsmoothed, impossible to ignore. Sky Vista acknowledges pattern of discriminatory seating practices, commits to reform following incident involving investor Jordan Pierce. The words cut through the industry like a blade, precise and final. Screens lit up in boardrooms, kitchens, airport lounges. Phones buzzed on nightstands, comment sections ignited. The story moved faster than anger ever had, because it carried proof. Jordan watched the city wake from the window of her apartment, steam rising from the streets below, traffic beginning its daily choreography. She held a mug of tea between her palms, letting the warmth seep in. Her phone lay face down on the counter. She didn't need to see it to know it was alive. Reporters, executives, activists, investors. Everyone wanted a piece of her silence. She gave them none of it. Not yet. This was not about her face. It was about a system finally forced to look at itself. Across town, in a glass-walled training facility, rows of flight attendants sat in straight-backed chairs, uniforms crisp, hands folded. The lights dimmed. A new workshop title filled the screen. Bias in the cabin, identifying discrimination and power misuse. A murmur passed through the room. "That's her," someone whispered. "The girl from the flight. I didn't know she was an investor. I feel sick. We all have to do better." The trainer stepped forward, calm, grounded, years of experience in her posture. "We are not here to point fingers," she said. "We are here to change what allowed this to happen. Dignity is not optional." Heads nodded. Pens moved. A shift began, slow but real. Miles away, curtains drawn tight against the day, Avery Collins sat on the edge of a bed in her father's house, phone buzzing relentlessly on the nightstand. Every headline carried her name. Apex Air under scrutiny after daughter's incident. Collins accused of targeted harassment. Manipulated airline staff. She didn't open them. She couldn't. Her father paced the room, fury contained but visible, a storm with nowhere to go. "Do you have any idea the damage you caused?" he snapped. Avery's voice shook. "I didn't know who she was." "That's exactly the problem," he cut in. "You didn't need to know. What you did was unacceptable. I can't defend racism, and I won't defend stupidity." She looked up at him, eyes wet. "I thought you'd protect me." He stopped pacing. His voice dropped. "Jordan Pierce is about to reshape aviation culture, and you nearly sabotaged our company, trying to destroy her." He turned away. For the first time in Avery's life, there was no shield left. A week later, cameras flashed like weather as Jordan stepped to a podium flanked by Sky Vista executives. She did not look like a victim. She looked like an architect. A banner hung behind her, simple and bold. The Pierce Dignity Initiative. A foundation for young black girls entering aviation and STEM. A reporter called out, "How does it feel to become the face of this movement?" Jordan smiled gently. "I'm not the face. I'm one of many who deserve dignity in spaces we've earned." The room quieted. "People think strength is loud," she continued. "Sometimes strength is choosing calm when the world tries to humiliate you. No one deserves humiliation. Not for race, not for background, not ever." Another voice asked what kept her grounded. Jordan lifted her phone just enough for the lock screen to glow. "When you go through deep waters, I will be with you." She lowered it. I wasn't alone. And the truth always rises. Applause filled the room. Not explosive, but sustained. The kind that meant people were thinking while they clapped. 2 weeks later, Jordan boarded a Sky Vista aircraft again. Not for confrontation, for witness. The welcome screen displayed the Foundation logo. Attendants greeted her with warmth that wasn't rehearsed. In seat 4A, the place that had once been stolen from her, a small placard rested against the armrest, reserved for a Pierce Dignity Initiative beneficiary. A teenage girl stood at the entrance, hands twisting together, eyes wide. She wore a sweater with a small aviation pin. "I've never been in first class," she whispered. "I didn't think people like me could." Jordan knelt to her level. "You're here because you belong," she said. "Not luck, not charity. Belonging." Tears pooled. Passengers watched, silent, moved. Jordan added softly, "Someday you'll sit here not as a guest, but as the pilot." The girl laughed through tears. Jordan took the seat across the aisle, choosing proximity over prominence. The cabin settled around them. "This seat used to make someone feel small," she whispered. "Now it lifts someone else." The engines hummed. The captain's voice filled the cabin, welcoming the inaugural scholar by name. Applause rose, warm and genuine. The girl covered her face, overwhelmed. Jordan squeezed her hand. As the plane rolled toward takeoff, Jordan closed her eyes. She had walked through humiliation, through fire. She was not burned. She was changed. Pain had become policy. A stolen seat had become a sanctuary. Outside, the city fell away. Inside, something steadier took its place. The future did not ask permission. It took its seat and flew. The aircraft lifted cleanly into the night, engines steady, wings cutting through cloud like intention made physical. Jordan Pierce kept her eyes open this time. She watched the runway lights dissolve into a thin ribbon, then disappear entirely. The cabin settled into that suspended hush that comes after takeoff, when gravity loosens its grip and people reveal who they are in small ways. A hand squeezed another. A sigh escaped. A future adjusted. Across the aisle, the girl sat very still, as if movement might undo the miracle. Her fingers traced the seam of the armrest, then paused, reverent. Jordan felt the pull of memory, the echo of a moment that had once made her small. She did not flinch from it. She let it inform her posture, her breath, the way she occupied space now. Quiet did not mean absent. Calm did not mean weak. A flight attendant approached, steps measured, expression careful but warm. "Miss Pierce," she said softly, "may I offer you anything?" Jordan shook her head. "Thank you." Her eyes flicked to the placard at 4A, then to the girl. The attendant followed the glance and nodded, something like pride crossing her face. "We're honored to have her," she said. "To have you." Honor, Jordan thought, was a word that should never have to be earned back after it's taken. She watched the attendant move on, the way her shoulders carried a new awareness, a recalibration that training alone could not teach. This was how culture changed, not with slogans, but with moments that refused to be forgotten. Her phone vibrated. A message from Rowan Evers, concise, unadorned. "Implementation has begun. Board vote unanimous. Press briefing scheduled. Your terms are locked." Another message followed from her legal team. "Regulatory agencies have opened parallel reviews. Pattern confirmed. Federal oversight likely." Jordan set the phone face down. She did not feel triumph. She felt responsibility widen, a horizon expanding. When a system admits fault, it does not absolve itself. It invites scrutiny. She intended to keep the door open. Across the country, In a windowless room lined with screens, analysts worked through the night. They mapped incidents to routes, routes to hubs, hubs to decision trees, where influence bent procedure, where silence paid dividends, where fear replaced policy. The findings moved upstream, then outward, then public. Not accusations, documentation, the kind that does not shout because it does not need to. In an airport hotel near a different terminal, a senior supervisor sat on the edge of a bed, uniform folded, eyes unfocused. She replayed the moment she'd looked away, the second she'd chosen convenience over courage. Training videos could teach rules. They could not teach regret. She reached for her phone and typed a message to a former colleague. "We failed someone. I won't do it again." The send button felt heavier than it should have. She pressed it anyway. In a corner office overlooking a river, an executive read the statement again, slower this time. He'd dismissed similar complaints for years, convinced they were anomalies, noise, exaggeration. He saw now how patterns hide behind plausibility, how easily comfort confuses itself for truth. He called his chief of staff and asked for a meeting, not to manage optics, to dismantle shortcuts. The plane leveled. A soft chime signaled permission to move. The girl glanced at Jordan, uncertain. "Am I allowed to?" she gestured vaguely. Jordan smiled. "You're allowed to breathe, to look, to ask for water if you want it, to be exactly where you are." The girl nodded, relief loosening her shoulders. "I want to be a pilot," she said, testing the words. Jordan did not rush the answer. She let the cabin noise fill the pause. Then she said, "Then start learning how weather behaves, how decisions stack, how calm saves lives, and don't let anyone tell you you're too much for the sky." The girl grinned, sudden and bright. Jordan leaned back. Her mind moved through the days ahead. Meetings, hearings, the work of building something durable from pain. She remembered her mother's voice, not quoting, just living the principle. "Stand firm. Let truth do the lifting." The captain's voice returned, steady and complete. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard. Tonight's flight represents more than a journey. It represents change. We appreciate your patience and your presence." A ripple of applause followed, restrained but sincere. Jordan felt it move through her chest like a low note held long. She closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again. The horizon outside was inked with stars. Somewhere else, Avery Collins stared at a blank screen. No new messages. The silence was louder than any headline. She reached for a glass of water and found her hand shaking. Power, she realized too late, had never been the thing that made her safe. Accountability was. Back in the cabin, the placard at 4A caught the light, modest and unassuming. Reserved. The word meant protection now, not exclusion. Jordan watched the girl read it again, lips moving silently, as if committing it to memory. The future rarely announces itself. It takes a seat and waits. Jordan exhaled, slow and measured. The work ahead would be relentless. Pushback would come disguised as reason. Fatigue would masquerade as closure. She would answer neither. She would keep the system awake. Outside, the plane cut a clean line through darkness. Inside, a standard had been set, not by shouting, not by spectacle, by standing still when the world expected retreat, and insisting that dignity travel first class every time. The momentum did not slow when the plane landed. It multiplied. By the time the wheels touched down and the cabin exhaled, the story had already slipped into places Jordan could not see from 30,000 feet. Court dockets, policy memos, boardroom agendas, dinner tables where people spoke more carefully than they had the night before. Change rarely announces itself with a banner. It arrives like pressure, reshaping decisions before anyone admits it is there. Jordan waited until the aisle cleared. She watched the girl at 4A gather her things with deliberate care, as if the seat might disappear if she moved too quickly. When they stood, the girl hesitated, then reached for Jordan's hand. "Thank you," she said, "for not moving." Jordan squeezed back, "For staying." They stepped into the jet bridge together, the fluorescent light flattening color, revealing faces in a way the cabin never did. An older man in a blazer paused to let them pass. He met Jordan's eyes and nodded once, something like apology there. A woman behind him whispered to her companion, "That's her." The investor. The words carried less spectacle now, more gravity. At the end of the bridge, a Sky Vista representative waited with a quiet smile and an envelope that held schedules, contacts, commitments. No cameras, no speeches, just logistics. Jordan appreciated that. She guided the girl to a car, watched it pull away, then turned back toward the terminal alone. Inside, a corridor of glass offices hummed with activity. Screens displayed dashboards Jordan recognized by shape, if not by content. Implementation timelines, compliance metrics, training completion rates ticking upward. She paused outside one office where a manager stood with arms folded, listening while a supervisor spoke, voice low, urgent. Jordan saw herself reflected faintly in the glass. She did not interrupt. She did not need to. The system was talking to itself now. Her phone vibrated. A message from the federal liaison assigned to the review. "Thank you for your cooperation. We will be requesting testimony. Expect a formal notice." Another from Rowan. "We're hearing from other airlines. They're asking questions they never asked before." Jordan replied with a single sentence. "Answer them honestly." She moved through the terminal at an unhurried pace, absorbing the subtle shifts. A gate agent paused mid-sentence, recalibrated tone, chose different words. A supervisor corrected a colleague gently but firmly when a joke drifted toward old habits. Small things, fragile things. She knew how easily they could snap back without reinforcement. Outside, rain began to fall, soft at first, then steadier. Jordan stood under the overhang and watched people hurry, umbrellas blooming like dark flowers. She remembered the first time she'd been told to wait, to step aside, to make it easier for everyone else. She remembered complying because resistance felt expensive. She had paid that price long enough. In a conference room 2 floors above the concourse, a training lead reviewed feedback from the morning sessions. The notes were raw: embarrassment, anger, relief, commitment. She circled a sentence written in block letters. I thought policy was enough. It isn't. She underlined it twice. Across town, in a quiet office, a junior attorney assembled exhibits for an upcoming hearing. Videos synced with timestamps. Emails threaded with intent. The narrative assembled itself without flourish. Fact after fact. He leaned back, surprised by the weight of it. Not outrage. Evidence. He forwarded the file with a brief note. This will hold. Jordan's car slid into traffic. The city pressed in, familiar and restless. She watched storefronts pass, the ordinary life continuing alongside extraordinary consequence. A radio host debated the story with callers who disagreed loudly, then thoughtfully, then less so. Someone asked why it mattered. Another answered without being prompted. Because dignity isn't a perk, it's a baseline. Her phone buzzed again. A message from the girl's mother. She didn't stop talking the whole ride home. She keeps reading the placard text out loud like it's a promise. Thank you for giving her that. Jordan closed her eyes for a moment. She thought of her own mother, the way guidance had come without fanfare, the way strength had been modeled rather than explained. She typed back. She earned it. That evening, Jordan stood in a small auditorium, lights dim, seats filled with employees who had volunteered to stay late. No press, no podium. She spoke without notes. I'm not here to punish mistakes, she said. I'm here to make it harder to repeat them. Systems don't change because one person was wrong. They change because many people decide to be right at the same time. A hand rose. What if standing up costs us our jobs? Jordan met the question head-on. Then the system is broken twice. Fixing it requires protection for those who speak. That's part of the work. She saw shoulders relax. Not all the way. Enough. Later, alone again, Jordan walked past a wall of framed aircraft photos. Milestones, anniversaries, smiling crews. She stopped at an older picture, black and white, a pilot standing proudly beside a propeller plane. The caption named him. The year. Progress had always come in increments. It had always been resisted. It had always been worth it. Her phone vibrated once more, a message from an unfamiliar number. I was on that flight. I didn't say anything. I'm sorry. I will next time, Jordan replied. Next time starts now. Night settled. The rain eased. Jordan stepped back into the city, feeling the fatigue arrive at last, honest and earned. She welcomed it. Fatigue meant the work had begun. Somewhere above, planes stitched routes across the dark, carrying people who trusted systems they rarely saw. Jordan intended to keep those systems visible, accountable, human. She paused at a crosswalk, light red, traffic waiting. For a moment, everything held. Then the signal changed. Jordan crossed with the crowd, neither ahead nor behind, occupying the space she had always been entitled to. The work would continue tomorrow, and the day after that, and the one after that, until dignity stopped being an exception and became the rule. The hearing room smelled like polished wood and old paper, the kind of place where decisions linger long after voices leave. Jordan sat at the witness table, hands folded, posture relaxed but deliberate. Across from her, a row of officials reviewed documents already familiar to her team. Screens glowed softly. Timelines, emails, footage paused at exact moments where truth had bent and broken. When Jordan spoke, she did not raise her voice. She didn't need to. She described the cabin lighting, the tone shift when a last name was spoken, the way policy dissolved under pressure. She named the silence, the fear, the convenience of looking away. She spoke of the difference between discretion and discrimination, between order and obedience. Each sentence landed clean, without embellishment, because the record itself did the persuading. A commissioner leaned forward. "What would have happened if you hadn't been who you are?" Jordan answered without hesitation. "The same thing that happened to others before me. The difference is that this time, the system was forced to watch itself. The room absorbed that." Pens paused. A clerk stopped typing, then resumed more carefully. Outside, a small crowd gathered behind barricades, reporters murmuring, cameras resting. Insult the hearing moved from testimony to consequence. Oversight measures proposed, deadlines set, protections codified, not promises, requirements, the kind that hold under pressure. In another city, at another airport, a gate agent hesitated as a passenger approached with a question about seating. She checked the screen, then checked herself. "Policy first," she said, kindly. "We'll make it right." The words felt new in her mouth. They felt solid. Jordan stepped into daylight hours later, shoulders lighter than they'd been in weeks. Her phone buzzed with updates. Other airlines issuing statements, training modules expanding, a regional carrier announcing an independent audit. The ripple widened. Not because it was fashionable, because it was safer to change than to explain why you hadn't. That evening, Jordan met with the board of her foundation in a modest office with too much glass and not enough art. They reviewed applications spread across the table, names, ages, aspirations written in careful handwriting and bold declarations. "I want to fly, because I like the way the sky doesn't judge. I want to build engines that are quieter. I want to be the one in the cockpit when my mother gets on a plane." Jordan listened. She asked questions that mattered, not about grades alone, but about resilience, curiosity, the ability to ask for help. The board voted unanimously on the first cohort. Jordan closed her eyes for a moment, absorbing the weight of what they were building. Across town, Avery Collins sat with an attorney who spoke in measured tones. Consequences were outlined, restrictions explained, names removed from lists she'd assumed were permanent. She nodded mechanically, absorbing the new shape of her world. When the attorney left, she stared at the wall and thought of the seat, the way it had felt to reclaim it. She understood now how thin that victory had been, how empty. Jordan did not think about Avery often. When she did, it was with clarity, not heat. Accountability had a way of draining drama from memory. Weeks passed. Policies rolled out. Metrics improved. Complaints declined, then changed in nature. People began reporting near misses, not just harms, trusting that reporting would lead to action. Jordan received messages from employees who had spoken up for the first time and kept their jobs, from passengers who noticed the difference and said so. One afternoon, Jordan returned to the airport without ceremony. She walked the concourse alone, observing. A supervisor corrected a trainee gently. A flight attendant paused to explain options rather than assumptions. A family navigated a tight connection with help instead of indifference. None of it made headlines. All of it mattered. At gate 32, Jordan watched a crew brief. The captain spoke plainly. "We follow policy because it protects people." All of them. Questions? A hand rose. "What if someone pressures us? Then we escalate," the captain said. "And we document. No exceptions." Jordan smiled to herself. This was how change settled in. Not loud, durable. That night, she sat at her desk and drafted a letter she'd been putting off. It wasn't for publication. It was for the people who would never know her name. She wrote about staying steady, about not shrinking, about choosing clarity when fear tempts compromise. She sealed the envelope and placed it in a drawer labeled for the future. On a flight the next morning, a young boy stared wide-eyed at the cockpit as he boarded. The pilot noticed and waved him closer. "Ever seen this many buttons?" she asked. The boy shook his head, grinning. His mother watched, hand over her mouth, surprised by the invitation. Jordan passed behind them, unnoticed, content to be part of a system that made room. As the plane pushed back, Jordan felt the familiar lift. She opened her notebook and wrote a single line. "Make dignity the default." Then she closed it, rested her head against the seat, and let the engines carry her forward. The invitation arrived without fanfare, a plain email with a subject line that did not try to impress. National Aviation Standards Forum, closed session. Jordan read it once, then again, noting what was not there. No praise, no framing, just an expectation of presence. She accepted. The conference room overlooked a runway, glass stretching from floor to ceiling, planes gliding past like punctuation. Around the table sat regulators, airline executives, union representatives, safety officers, people who rarely shared space unless something had gone wrong. Jordan took a seat halfway down the table, neither head nor tail, aware of the choreography. She was not there to be centered. She was there to be unavoidable. The chair opened the session with a familiar phrase. "We're here to discuss best practices moving forward." Jordan listened as others spoke first. Language cautious, apologies abstract, commitments conditional. She let the room warm to its own rhythm before she entered it. "Best practices only work when they're inconvenient," she said, her voice cutting through the layered politeness. "Otherwise, they're preferences." A few heads turned. A pen stopped mid-note. She continued, not pressing, not retreating. What happened on that flight wasn't a failure of training alone. It was a failure of protection. People knew the rules. They chose fear over them. If you want change, you need consequences that outweigh fear. A regulator cleared his throat. "Are you suggesting federal mandates?" "I'm suggesting clarity," Jordan replied. "Clear escalation paths, whistleblower protections with teeth, documentation that cannot be buried by a last name. You already know how to do this. You've done it in other sectors. Aviation doesn't get an exemption because it's uncomfortable." An executive shifted in his seat. That would slow operations. Jordan met his eyes. Dignity is not a delay. It's a standard. If your operation can't function without violating it, the operation needs fixing. Silence stretched. Not hostile. Considering. By the time the session ended, action items filled the board. Task forces formed. Deadlines attached. Jordan left without shaking hands, not out of disdain, but because momentum mattered more than ceremony. Outside, the sky had that washed-out blue that comes after rain. Jordan walked the perimeter of the terminal, the long way, thinking about scale, about how quickly movements get co-opted when they become popular, how easily language of reform becomes branding. She would not allow this to become a slogan. She would insist on friction, on measurement, on follow-through. Her phone buzzed, a message from the foundation coordinator. First scholarship recipients finalized. Orientation next month. Another message followed, this one from a crew member. I intervened today. It was awkward. It worked. Thank you. Jordan stopped walking. She stood there, watching a plane lift into the sky and let the words settle. Not gratitude. Confirmation. That night, she attended a small dinner hosted by a civil rights group that had been fighting this fight long before her seat was stolen. The room was modest, the food simple, the stories heavy and necessary. Jordan listened more than she spoke. When she did speak, she spoke about process, about how to keep momentum without burning people out, about how to turn attention into infrastructure. An elder at the table nodded slowly. Movements fail when they depend on heroes, she said. They last when they build systems. Jordan smiled. Exactly. Weeks later, the first compliance report landed on her desk. Data trended in the right direction, but not enough. She flagged gaps, wrote questions, sent it back with comments that were firm and specific. Improvement is not a feeling, she wrote. It's a pattern. In a different city, a flight attendant faced a choice when a passenger attempted to leverage influence. She remembered the training. She remembered the protections. She escalated. The passenger fumed. The policy held. She went home, tired and proud in equal measure. In another office, an executive chose not to override a decision he once would have. He cited the new standards. The room accepted it. Something shifted, quietly. Jordan returned to the airport again, unannounced. She watched from a distance, listened, noted where old habits tried to reassert themselves. She intervened only when necessary. The goal was not to be present. It was to be unnecessary. One afternoon, she received a handwritten letter forwarded from the foundation. It was from the girl who had sat in 4A. I start ground school next week. I still get nervous when people look at me. But now I don't move. I stay. Jordan folded the letter carefully and placed it beside the card from her mother. 2 anchors. Different generations. Same instruction. As the year edged toward its close, invitations multiplied. Panels, awards, profiles. Jordan declined most of them. She accepted one, selectively, when the audience was front-line workers. When the questions were practical. When the room smelled like effort instead of applause. At the end of that talk, someone asked what kept her going when progress felt slow. Jordan thought of the cabin, the silence, the way a lie had spread because it was easy. She thought of the system learning to resist that ease. Consistency, she said, and memory. We don't forget what happened. We build so it can't happen again. She left the stage to a standing ovation that felt less like celebration and more like commitment. That night, alone at her desk, Jordan reviewed the agenda for the coming months. Hearings, audits, scholarships, training refreshers. It was a long road. She did not romanticize it. She welcomed it. Outside, planes continued their steady rhythm, arrivals and departures tracing lines of trust across the dark. Jordan turned off the light and stood at the window for a moment, watching one take off, then another. She had not reclaimed a seat. She had changed how seats were held. Morning came quietly, the way it does after something irreversible has settled into place. Jordan stood at the window of her apartment, city stretching below, awake and ordinary again. Traffic lights blinked through their cycles. Coffee shops opened their doors. Planes climbed into the sky on schedules that no longer felt abstract to her. The world had absorbed the shock and returned to motion. But it did not return unchanged. She dressed without thinking about cameras or meetings, choosing comfort over symbolism. The card from her mother rested where it always did, tucked away, no longer needed for steadiness, but kept for memory. Strength had become muscle now, automatic, reliable, something she carried without effort. At the airport later that day, she moved through the concourse unnoticed. That was the measure of success. No whispers, no phones raised, just people doing their jobs with a little more care than before. A gate agent took time to explain an upgrade policy to an older couple, voice patient, eyes kind. A supervisor stepped in early when a conversation tightened, redirecting without embarrassment. The changes were not dramatic. They were consistent. They would last because they were boring in the best way. Jordan paused near a window overlooking the runway. A familiar aircraft taxied past, sunlight catching the wing. She remembered the first time she'd been told to stand up and move. The heat in her face. The way silence had felt like judgment. She remembered deciding not to give the moment what it wanted. Not noise, not collapse, presence. Behind her, a child laughed, the sound sharp and joyful. She turned and saw a small group boarding with a crew member crouched to their level, explaining where the wings came from, how the plane stayed up. The children listened, wide-eyed, believing what they were told, because the telling invited belief. Jordan watched until the group moved on. Her phone buzzed once. A message from the foundation coordinator. Orientation went well. Parents cried. Kids asked 1,000 questions. We're ready for the next step. Jordan smiled. Ready was a moving target, but it was enough. In the weeks that followed, the work did not slow. Reports came in. Adjustments followed. Some resisted. Some adapted. A few tried to wait it out, assuming attention would fade. Jordan did not chase them. She let policy do what policy does when it is written clearly and enforced consistently. Time has a way of siding with standards. One evening, she returned to the same seat. 4A. Not as a symbol now, but as a checkpoint. The placard had been replaced with something simpler, quieter. A commitment etched into the armrest where hands naturally rest. No fanfare, just a promise made tactile. She sat down, buckled in, and looked around the cabin. Different faces, different stories, the same shared trust. She felt the weight of it, not heavy, but real. This was never about winning an argument. It was about repairing a fracture that had been normalized for too long. As the plane pushed back, the captain's voice came through, steady and unadorned. "Welcome aboard. We appreciate you choosing to fly with us." The words landed differently now. Choice mattered when dignity was assured. Jordan closed her eyes for a moment during takeoff, not to escape, but to listen. The engines, the lift, the subtle moment when the ground releases its claim. She thought of everyone who had been told, directly or not, that they did not belong where they were. She thought of how often systems ask the wrong people to shrink. She thought of what happens when someone refuses. At cruising altitude, she opened her notebook and wrote a final line beneath the others. Hold the line. Then she closed it. Some things did not need revision. The cabin lights dimmed. Conversations softened. Outside, clouds stretched endlessly, indifferent and fair. Jordan rested her head against the seat, feeling the hum of motion carry her forward. Not above anyone. Not ahead of anyone. Exactly where she belonged. If this story stayed with you, if you recognized a moment you've lived or witnessed, take a second to like and subscribe so these stories keep reaching the places they're needed, and leave a comment with 3 words that matter to you, something like "speak your truth," "stay standing strong," or "dignity is non-negotiable."